Hi, hello, Passive Pixels Media Catch-Up Podcast. Look, this is going to be a weird episode. I'm just calling it right now, okay? I released the Leftovers episode. That was pretty good. I put a lot of effort into that one. This episode's going to be threadbare. You should probably use that time to watch the first 3 episodes of The Leftovers, so then you can go watch that episode, or listen to it, either one. As long as you experience The Leftovers, that's pretty much that. Let's go ahead and just get into the table of contents and explain why this is all going to be weird. What I'll be talking about today is going to be Persona 3 Portable, Texas Hold'em Poker, Scrabble, A Game of Thrones, the book, not the show, Uno, $1 Million But, Mad Men Season 2, Nier Gestalt, and some more of The Leftovers. Okay, you know how I was making jokes the previous episode that Texas had snow? Well, that frozen tundra decided to knock out half of my house for power, and that was an annoying process. From there, most of my time was also spent editing the Leftovers podcast, and because of that, I just wasn't too deep in entertainment at this time. Pretty much most of the things on this list were things that I had either played or used for entertainment during that freeze when we didn't have power. This was probably an early moment where I was thinking, is this going to be something where I start forcing myself to watch things or play things just so I can talk about them? But no, I'm making this podcast to reflect on everything I've done. I'm not going to watch or play anything because I think it'll be good for the podcast. It's just going to be me reviewing what I've played or watched. Also, moving forward, I'm thinking what I want to do with these special episodes is that I might want to bring in anyone who wants to talk about something that I feel deserves the extra attention from something I've either played or watched. I'm not going to start pulling things that I know I can get people to join in a conversation with me. So, for example, if someone really likes Batman, I'm not going to go watch Batman the next week. I will just make a mental note, okay, if I ever do revisit Batman, I'm going to invite that person. So these special episodes moving forward, you should sort of think of those as me taking small little pieces of what I took from the previous 2 weeks and deciding to amplify that louder for everyone else. Okay, that's enough preamble. Let's get into it. So we're going to go ahead and go in the order that we usually do. We're going to go movies, TVs, and game. Movies. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I can't. That whole preamble earlier about not forcing myself to watch something or play something for the podcast is in relation to movies. There's nothing that I watched in the second half of February. I can guarantee that next month I'll be talking about 4 James Bond movies because I really don't plan on losing my New Year's resolution. But as it stands now, it has been maybe about 2+ weeks since I watched a movie. And now that I say that out loud, it's making me think I really need to do something about that. I'm thinking maybe Arrival might be something that I watch next, excluding the Bond movies. So from there, I guess let's just go ahead and go into TV. Let's go ahead and go to the evergreen topic that I've been touching on this entire time, which is Mad Men Season 2. You see, like I said, this is going to be a really janky episode. I wouldn't be shocked if somehow this one clocks in under half an hour. But Mad Men, it is still Season 2. We finished it. I still have the exact same opinions as I did before. Mad Men is still a very high quality show, but really, I still think that this is a bit of a sophomore slump compared to Season 1. I still enjoy the characters. I still enjoy the writing. Everything that I've said has stayed consistent, and at some point, I'll get back to Season 3. I told myself that I'm going to finish Mad Men, then get to The Shield, and then at that point, I need to reevaluate what's the next show I'm watching. So yeah, just an abbreviated update on Mad Men. Next up is The Leftovers. I watched 2 more episodes. My best friend was starting to itch for it after we watched the first 3. I can tell you right now, everything that I said in the podcast, still true about The Leftovers. The only other thing I can say is that, to reiterate what I said then, is that there was a brief period in time where I was thinking Mr. Robot was going to be my favorite TV show of all time. However, now that I'm 5 episodes into Season 1 of The Leftovers, there is no way that I could ever make Mr. Robot my number 1. However, it sits strongly at a number 2. I know, somehow my favorite TV show doesn't even get that much of a note here. Whoops. Okay, that's movies, that's TV down. It hasn't even been 5 minutes and I've already gone through the 2 topics that I usually hit the hardest on most episodes. Now, this is going to be unconventional because I can tell you right now, I really don't read books, but during that freeze when I did not have power, I pulled a book out. So for the first time, and probably the only time books will get brought up, is whenever I randomly read more of a Game of Thrones. So let's go ahead and jump into A Game of Thrones, a book by George Railroad Martin. Of course, if you know what Game of Thrones is, you basically know what A Game of Thrones is, the first book. Everything that you saw in season 1 is pretty much just the book, except what I feel like the book excels at is what you could literally say any book excels at, which is you will always have more details within the book that don't get translated well into the TV show. However, not to completely beat up on season 1 of the TV show does have extra scenes to flesh out characters in between interplay and all their conversations. The book so far feels like it is very focused on a set group of characters, but I feel like there are way more bit parts within the show that have more texture. But the main characters between both the book and the TV show are just as good regardless where you read them. One of the things that I had forgotten about books is that they can shift you between time periods and have you not even notice it. In a TV show, it's very disruptive once you have a flashback show up, and at that point, you are in that time period. You can't slip back and forth between time periods and have it be completely normal, unless, you're Damon Lindelof in Watchmen, which at that point, look, you're talented, we get it. When it comes to books, you will have things that are said within the present, and then at that point, the actual writing in between the dialogue scenes will then lead into a backstory that will give you a little bit more context into what is actually being said by the characters. Even though in the show for season 1, you understand that both Ned and the king, what's his name? King Robert. You know that Ned and Robert go back far behind a couple of years, but it wasn't until I was reading the book that I realized that those two characters not only were pretty close throughout childhood and adulthood, but apparently they were raised as brothers underneath the Arryns. And of course, season 1 opens up with the death of Jon Arryn, as you would think that the Lannisters had done it. The book actually has this scene where Ned and Robert talk, and then time just immediately slips back into how they were raised together and how when Ned's family were basically sentenced to death by the king, he asked Robert to help him get revenge. The weirdest thing here is that the first season of the TV show cuts really closely to the book. I want to say I am maybe what you would imagine is the second or third episode in the show is where I am in the book. So I am still not very far. I bought these books maybe 3 years ago, and I've not made much headway just because reading for some reason isn't the medium I really connect to that much. I prefer movies just because I enjoy cinematography. I enjoy games because I like it when games have gameplay that support the story, or vice versa, story that supports the gameplay. I understand the appeal to reading just because there's just so much texture that you can usually get through reading because almost everything is controlled within it. Even though movies are, on controlled sets most of the time, you can still have mistakes that you couldn't account for. Games, you can still design everything that's within that world, but coding is hard, okay? Even if you code something perfectly, you can't account for every single variable that happens, so at some point, it is going to break. The worst you can think of when it comes to books is that maybe there's a typo or something, but most of the time people can read right through those, so you're not going to be really worried about immersion being broken because, I don't know, the is supposed to be them. Beyond that, other book differences between the show is that everyone's aged a little bit down. One moment that always sticks with me is that Catelyn Stark is just way more cruel to Jon Snow. There was at some point where Jon Snow was going to leave to the Night's Watch, and Catelyn, while holding Bran's hand after he had fallen out of the tower, just looks at Jon Snow and just says, "You should have been the one that's in this bed, not him." Those are the last words that Jon Snow hears his stepmother tell him. I totally understand why it was cut in the show, just because you want to be on Catelyn's side, but you also want to be on Jon Snow's side. For some reason, I feel like in book form, you can be more forgiving, but I truly believe that TV and movies have harder rules like that, where you still need to have something redeeming in characters to be able to follow them. Of course, I really don't read books, so this is just my very movie and TV slanted take on books. I feel like books, you can get away a bit more with having characters be colder, probably because you have it written out on the page, everything that they're thinking, everything that they're feeling. So even if they say something so abhorrent like that, you know what is in their heart and what is in their mind, while in movies and TV, you have to be able to read into the performance what they're saying. It's kind of hard to pull off a performance where you basically say, hey, yeah, stepchild, I wish you were dead because you are not actually my child. This is my child. Even if it's in olden times like that, it still comes off really cruel no matter what audience you put it in front of. Beyond that, that's pretty much it. Books, pretty good when it comes to drawing worlds. I like movies and TV more. I really only read like maybe a chapter or two, so most of the things I mentioned were things that I remember about the book prior when I was actually trying to stay committed to reading it. Okay, with that out of the way, we're going to go into games, credibility out the window, and it's going to start getting really weird. So a little bit of background. Of course, I don't take notes for this at all. What I do is that I just write down what I've either played, watched, or in this case read, and I write it down and I tell myself I'll talk about it later. Since we didn't have power during a good portion of this month, I was relying on handhelds and board games to keep me entertained. I really have no idea how deep I can get into Scrabble or Uno, but honestly, I'm still going to give it an attempt anyways because, damn it, this entire podcast is about everything that I've played, watched, in this case read, but still, I'm going to keep track of it all, damn it. I'm sorry, not every dire entry can be a banger like the last. All right, so what I'm going to do is that I'm basically going to recount everything that I played during that time without power and see what pulls from there. We're going to go ahead and start with Persona 3 Portable. Now, Persona 3 Portable, PSP game from the Persona series. It is a enhanced port, let's go with enhanced port, of Persona 3 that released on the PS2. I had bought it maybe half a decade ago after I beat Persona 4 Golden on Vita. So that's how I'm playing it. I'm playing Persona 3 Portable on my Vita. There is a save on there. I think the last time that I had touched it was maybe 2017 or so. I'm not gonna lie, it made it on the list, but I played maybe less than an hour or two during that time period. So pretty much at this point, I'm basically going to be talking about Persona 3 in general as far as I remember it. Honestly, it makes me really sad to have gone backwards in the Persona series. I feel like Persona is one of those series that you want to start with earlier entries because every single next one that you play, it progressively makes it difficult to go back to. I had beaten Persona 5 Royal at the end of last year, and I swear, even just playing Persona 5 Royal means that going back to base Persona 5 is going to be a difficult thing. And of course, it just gets exacerbated the further back you go. So to go from my last experience being Persona 5 Royal to jump back into Persona 3 Portable is jarring even if it's about 2 months removed. It also doesn't help that to get the game, a ridiculously huge JRPG, to be on the PSP, they had to cull it back really hard. At least in Persona 4 Golden, you were a character that could walk in environments, and that was a Vita game. You know, it was ported from the PS2 to the Vita. However, Persona 3 Portable going from the PS2 to PSP means you're not a character walking around in the world, you're just an icon floating around these JPEGs of an environment. It feels more like a visual novel than it does a JRPG. From what I can remember, I just remember preferring the Persona 4 Golden cast over the Persona 3 cast. I think what would happen is that the people who were in the same year as you, I don't think I found them interesting. The dude who is in a hat, kind of the typical bro that you have in Persona games, I really didn't like him. I felt annoyed with him. The girl that is also in your class, the problem is that when she's placed next to Mitsuru, like, why are you even here? I'm sorry. I like you enough, but Mitsuru's right over there. I'm going to go grind out all the genius that I can, so maybe she sniffs in my direction. What I remember is that the upperclassmen, Mitsuru and Akihiko, I really like the two of those characters. I, for the life of me, cannot remember anything about them besides Akihiko being a boxer and Mitsuru, I think, being the daughter of the dean or the daughter of the person who's running the SEES program. I don't know if that's pronounced right, S-E-E-S. If you look up Persona 3, S-E-E-S, I'm pretty sure that it's something. I'm just going to keep pronouncing it like that because I don't want to look it up. I already went into the deep end of this game and I didn't even explain what the hook of Persona 3 is. I could try to explain what the hook of Persona is in general, but I'm just going to tell you go play Persona instead. Figure out what is exactly the common point between all these. So I'm going to operate on the knowledge that you've tried a Persona for an hour or two. The hook to Persona 3 is that, of course, like every other Persona game, you are a teenager, you go to high school, you live your life, and you do something supernatural at nights or daytime. Persona 3, basically, something is happening where there's a 25th hour where people are enclosed in coffins, a giant tower called Tartarus shows up, and you are tasked with climbing it all the way to figure out what the hell is causing this 25th hour to put people in coffins, and there are shades that are kidnapping people and putting them inside the tower, and you have to save them. I feel like that's a summary that I held to me for about now 5 years. We'll see how accurate that is. I'm pretty sure I'll hear back from it, but for now, that's what I'm going to operate with. The gameplay is a solid mix of turn-based battles and social aspects where you start leveling people up to get more story, as well as powering yourself up or your teammates if those are the people you choose to hang out with. No joke, for a second I doubted myself calling the enemies shades. I have now just realized that the enemies in Persona are the exact same enemies in Nier Gestalt. They're both called shades. But whatever, I'm pretty sure that's a revelation that other people have made. It's just something that clicked with me right now. One of the aspects that I always appreciate about Persona games is knowing that time isn't exactly infinite. Sure, you can stay in the same day forever, but as soon as you choose to do something, that day is over and it turns into night. At night, you can decide, okay, am I going to go to sleep? Am I going to go hang out with people? Am I going to go and, I don't know, use a crane machine or something? I enjoy knowing that your decisions are time sensitive and you must factor in, do I want to do this with my time? Besides that, I'm still enjoying the game with what 1 hour I played. My save put me back into the Tartarus. I just played a little bit more, trying to familiarize myself with the characters that I had, what attacks they use. I had just bought a PlayStation TV, which, hell, even I barely knew about it, so I'll explain what it is. A PlayStation TV is a PS Vita that connects to the TV. What is the Vita? It is a PSP 2. Yes, there was a PSP 2 and no one bought it, and I blame all of you for this, because now there are no chances to get a PSP 3. Basically, the only reason that I bring up a PS TV is because now that I have a way to play the game for my wife, and that's the main reason I played Persona 5 Royal. I was not ready to go back to Persona 5 Royal after having played Persona 5 when it came out. I wasn't missing that game yet, and I forced myself through Persona 5 Royal because I know that my wife likes those games. So I bought a PS TV to replay Persona 4 Golden to get the Platinum and to finally finish my first playthrough of Persona 3 Portable. When am I going to get back to it? Not anytime soon. There's a whole bunch of other games that I want to try and get to before I even revisit Persona. I really think I might end up breaking this game out when Persona 6 hits or gets announced, because at that point I'll be itching for more Persona and I'll just say, okay, I'm not going to buy that day one. I'm just going to play Persona 3 Portable. Persona 3, I'm positive on it. I'll get to it eventually, but I don't know when. After having tried Persona 3 Portable from there, that was when I pulled out a poker set. It was my wife, her sister, her husband, and we all played poker. My brother-in-law cleaned us out hard. I'm impressed at his skills. I really am. Texas Hold'em is just the way to play poker. I don't want to ever play five-hand poker. Texas Hold'em is just such a great game where you're not playing your cards, you're playing the person across from you. I love the 3 cards on the table. I love that you're playing the hand that everyone else has, and you basically have to read, okay, is this person actually lying? What have they been doing so far? Could they be bluffing? What exactly is going on in their head? And am I about to get knocked out right now? Is it smart to go all in? I enjoy the mind games that come along with this. I enjoy the shit talking that comes with it, where you start bluffing yourself up even higher than what anyone else thinks and start scaring people away. When you bluff yourself and you know that you have nothing to do and you're just here to bullshit around and you're here to bait people into making stupid decisions. All of this is just such great design. There's such a good reason why people were getting shot in the Old West over poker. Pretty sure I've done some really messed up moves in poker that should have gotten me shot. But thankfully we live in society, so maybe I didn't get a shot, maybe I just got a nasty look instead. All I know is that now that I have a house, I would not mind at some point gathering a whole bunch of people, either friends or family, and hosting a poker night. If you're family and you like the idea, hell, hit me up. Let me see if we schedule something out. If you're a friend or a stranger, I don't know, man. Look, we'll test you out. Don't murder me. Maybe I'll give you my address. Probably not. Send cash first and we'll figure it out. After my brother-in-law was done cleaning us out with about 2 or 3 poker games that lasted less than 20 minutes, we moved over to Scrabble. And for some reason, Scrabble is just a game that I've always clicked with as a kid. Even now, Scrabble was one of those board games that I knew I was going to want to have in the house. Because it's tangentially related, of course, Scrabble, spelling, get points. I remember specifically that when I was a kid, of course, everyone had spelling tests. I remember that specifically I would not study for tests, and what I would do instead is that I would just watch TV with subtitles, and eventually through osmosis, I just sort of learned how to start spelling things. So while there were other people who were like, oh man, I don't really want to worry about spelling, I enjoyed Scrabble because I knew that because I watched so much TV as a kid, I just knew how to spell words. I also know that one of the books that I read as a kid shot up my ability to read at a higher level than I was. I was about in the 1st or 2nd grade reading 8th grade level because I wanted to figure out what was going on with the Baudelaire kids in a series of unfortunate events. The book that I remember specifically was the 8th book because I just remember it sticking in my head. Oh, the teacher said I'm on an 8th grade level. This book is the 8th book. I wonder if each book is another grade level. Speaking of which, just because that's another tangent, the Netflix TV show, A Series of Unfortunate Events, I have watched it. I loved it, and I have no idea if that show's even good because I just know that that is a property that I'm so nostalgic about that I can't separate myself from it to be able to tell if I think it's even good or not. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Scrabble. Okay, so Scrabble, I really enjoy once it starts evolving into, is that a word? Which becomes a whole lot more fun when you're in a winter storm with no electricity and the only thing you can use to tell if it's a word or not is by using predictive text on your phone, which is hilarious because predictive text a lot of times will learn things that are not words if you spell it often enough. And then the best part is when it starts evolving into, hey, can we use cum as a word? Put in cum. Oh my god, that's hilarious. Yeah, I'm gonna write down tit. Once it starts becoming a shitstorm of things that you could say in a classroom of 8th grade boys and they'd start giggling, that's when the true magic of Scrabble shows up. Now, of course, there's a whole bunch of derivatives where you got Words with Friends or what other thing was huge on Facebook about a decade ago. I can tell you right now, I never did like them. Part of the appeal to a board game is the fact that you are surrounded by the actual people that you're playing against, and because of the tactile nature of it. I would probably never play a Monopoly with people that I can meet up with physically, which I can't exactly say the same thing for certain games. Halo 2 for me is always going to be a split screen experience, but Rainbow Six Siege is just so ridiculous that I could never expect to get 5-10 people in the same room to get a full match going. I just really like the way that the little tile pieces feel in your hand. I really like the little wooden thing that they sit on. I really like the felt bag that they come in. There's a lot to really like about Scrabble, and it's weird to say that a board game is underrated, but I feel like people don't talk enough Scrabble. Monopoly deserves all the respect it gets, but Scrabble, pretty damn good too. At least that's the small frozen tundra section of entertainment that I had. After that, it was a huge dead zone of finding things for entertainment. At that point, my house had half energy. It was weird. Half of my house had energy, which is funny because the theater side of the house did have power, and for some reason, I just was not feeling like playing or watching anything. The room and the kitchen and the washer and dryer, the garage, that was the half of the house that did not have power. And it was honestly the weirdest thing. What ended up happening is that the electric company that handles the last mile to our house, basically the frozen something happened with the box in the backyard that was messing up half of the power for my house and both my neighbor to my left and to my right. The funniest thing is that even though my house was half power, since the theater room was powered, so was the office, so I could still work. Hey, gotta pay the electricity bill somehow. After that, there were 3 more board games, card games, whatever you want to call, that I had played. From there, I had 2 friends. They wanted to come hang out. So we ended up playing, in this order, Uno, What Do You Meme, and $1 Million But. We're going to go ahead and start with Uno. I don't really think I care for Uno. My problem is that Uno at some point will just take forever if you play it with the wrong rules. I am a big believer in making Uno as broken as possible and as fast as possible because I truly believe that I'm a person who spoils Uno very quickly. As soon as I get impatient with Uno, I do not care. I will start eating the entire deck and then making the game worse for people. And this always happens if the house rules for Uno are not right. I am absolutely an Uno terrorist. Thankfully, we played it with rules where you can stack cards on top of each other, you can chain them a little bit, you can move in between colors. It's a solid way to play Uno. If you're just playing it very standard, I do not think that Uno is enjoyable. Once you start getting crazy and breaking the way that you can put down cards, oh, absolutely. Uno, pretty difficult to not recommend. Now, this is a question that I have for everyone, just because it was an argument that I had. When it comes to Uno, when can you call Uno? If someone is holding one hand in their left card, right? And you have, wow, I said that opposite. I'm going to keep it in. And then you have one card in your other hand. You are still technically holding 2 cards. At what point can you call Uno? I was arguing that as soon as the card leaves your hand, as you put it down, doesn't matter which hand, as soon as it is on the ground, you can call Uno. But I was called Uno earlier. This is very biased, and I absolutely have a stake in this argument. If I'm told anything opposite, banned. Okay, you're not banned, whatever, but I will hear dissenting opinions. I was called Uno when I was putting down my second card. However, they were arguing that during the process of putting down the card is when you can call Uno on someone. However, I fundamentally disagree with that because Uno is 1 in Spanish. There is 1 card in each hand. I am 1 person. I have 2 hands. That is 2 cards. I am lawyering this and I fought for my life and I don't even remember how it turned out. And yet I'm still passionate about it. Uno, it is a game. It is enjoyable. Play with the right rules and don't screw me over. I will not hesitate to nuke your ass with a +4. Okay, less hostility. One of our friends brought over What Do You Meme? Now, the problem is with this game is that memes move too quickly. There is literally a meme that I just saw maybe about 10 minutes ago. Okay, maybe not 10 minutes ago because I've been recording for maybe about 30 minutes. But you get the point that something that I saw not long ago is already old by the time that I have stopped thinking about it. The problem is that What Do You Meme, of course, is a product that needs to go through Q&A, printing, distribution, and selling. So by the time that it gets to you, you're already getting stale memes of other stale memes that have already gotten deep fried memes and have become ironically funny. That's about it. I don't really have much more to say. Just memes are good. They get old very quickly. They age worse than milk. Going into the next game is a card game called $1 Million But. There are different rules, but the one that we usually play with to get the funniest responses is going to be what would you not do for $1 million? Of course, $1 Million But is a card game made by Rooster Teeth. I have no idea why. I just know that YouTube personalities that I watched for a long time were on Rooster Teeth playing that. I thought it was funny, so I bought it. Think Cards Against Humanity, except you're trying to create horrible scenarios. Like, oh, you get $1 million, but every single time you sneeze, the entire world loses electricity and everyone knows it was you. Or things like $1 million, but every single time you hear a car honk, Abraham Lincoln challenges you to a fist fight and he's going to call you the N-word while fighting you. The idea is to create a scenario that is so horrific that the person judging has no choice to go, yeah, there's absolutely no way, no amount of money that you can pay me, specifically in this case $1 million. There's no way that you can pay me $1 million to go through that. That's the premise. It was fun. I really don't have much more to say to that besides it was fun. We're going to round it out with, of course, the game that I keep coming back to because I need to get this done. Nier Gestalt. I finally made more headway into it. Nier Gestalt, much like Nier Automata, have different endings that give you more of the story. It's kind of disingenuous to call them endings because they're more like chapter breaks for an entire story that if you get to only the first ending, you're getting an incomplete story. I had beaten endings A and B for Nier Gestalt so far. And even though I haven't really been enjoying most of my time with it, most of the strengths lie with the characters and the music. It is undeniable to say that the ending part of both ending A and ending B are legitimately great. I was absolutely enjoying myself despite the not exactly great gameplay that's in this game. But I found myself caring very deeply by the time that I got to the end of the game. And B Run, even though it has a lot of things about it that are just repeats from A Run, they do add more things into the second playthrough that it doesn't feel as much as a waste of time as the first half of Automata's B Run does. Now, keep in mind, I did say the first half of B Run to Nier Automata. The second half of B Run in Automata absolutely makes up for the fact that the first half is kind of slow, but it is undeniable to say that the B Run in Nier Gestalt holds its own very well because they pace out the new content well enough that you don't feel like there's a dead zone earlier on of things that are additions to the story. I may have been quick to judge is something I would have said had I stopped at A Run, but the problem is that the game has 4 different endings, A, B, C, and D, and the problem is that once you get to C Run, all the momentum that you had from the great endings that are A and B halts to a grinding stop once you realize that you have to collect all the weapons in game to then actually get the final 2 endings. Now, here's the thing. I knew that I had to grab the weapons initially because this is my second full playthrough. I had beaten this game back in 2019, I think. I have trophies for it. I have timestamps. You can check there. PlayStation name, Ed Casty. Ed Casty. But I am speaking more from my first playthrough. I remember that by the time that I got to C Run and the game went, yeah, you need to collect all the weapons. I hadn't done a single side quest. I was completely poor. Most of these weapons are about 5-digit prices, and I immediately started looking up how the hell can I grind for money. So I stopped most of the game to start farming flowers that are worth 5,000 a piece to then actually be able to continue the story. And I cannot tell you how badly that colored most of the game for me because the gameplay isn't good. The characters and music and story, very good. However, the whole part of the story before the ending isn't exactly grade A. It isn't until you get to the ending that the story actually starts showing, yeah, we were setting things up this entire time. I'm really not looking forward to continuing playing this game because I know that the endings to A and B are going to be the peak. I told myself that I was going to do a full replay and that I was going to do a platinum run for this game. A platinum run entails me to get all the endings, to grind out and fight enemies that I really don't need to fight anymore, but because they have items that drop, I need those. And not only do I need those items, I also need to upgrade every single weapon to their highest level, which involves more grinding, more killing enemies, more resource gathering, and I am just not looking forward to that whatsoever. After that, there's one trophy where I have to play the game again and speed run it in under 15 hours, which thankfully, if I do that immediately after doing all of this, it probably shouldn't take me too long because I remember where everything is and I know that I'm not going to get sidetracked. I feel like I've been mostly negative with this game, and having played those 2 endings again makes me realize that it was much more of a mixed bag than I remember it being. The music is still phenomenal. I will still fight anyone to say that this is probably one of the greatest original soundtracks ever composed. And now, pretty much having completed the best part of the game, it does get me more excited for Nier Replicant. Of course, the remake to these games, Of course, not exactly a remake, it's not exactly a remaster. I'm going to have it recorded right now and say I don't think it's just going to be a remaster or remake. I still think that it's going to be secretly a sequel and or a prequel. It is going to be deeper than what it seems. Book it. But regardless, I'm still very excited for Nier Replicant and the special edition that I ordered from Square Enix. Side note, do not trust me with money. I bought a Nier Automata Black Box Edition. Look that up if you want to be horrified. All right, and that's it. Call the game because of weather, because I already know what I'm going to name this episode, even before I start editing. I'm going to call it the worst episode, parentheses, so far. Honestly, it might be a pattern, but I don't really want to attribute the special episode for making this episode lacking. I want to blame it more on the weather than anything else. So from here on out, bye. Go watch The Leftovers.